Hello, my name is Hilary Bond. I'm a Church of England pioneer priest and schools worker in the parish of Wareham in South Dorset. I am a Third Order Franciscan and I'm a climate activist. I am part of Extinction Rebellion, Christian Climate Action and Just Stop Oil. Although I haven't been an official Franciscan for all that long, I think it's been in my DNA all along, particularly with regard to seeing all of creation as brother and sister and longing for justice for that family. I'm going to share with you something of my story as an activist, and I hope that you'll be able to see how that ties in with the life I have committed to as a Franciscan. I guess my love of creation started because my mum taught me to be outside. But it was normal then, when I was little. Playing out was what you did. When I was about 3, I had pet woodlice on the patio, and I can remember being fascinated by the different colours and different sizes, and the way that different ones reacted if you touched them, really gently, of course. There were other family influences too. My Uncle Jim, who lived in South Wales, had an allotment, and whenever we went to see him, he would take me to work with him on the allotment. He grew a lot of food, partly because in South Wales, after the mines closed down, it became to some extent necessary, and it gave him something to do when there was nothing else. As well as growing food, he had a particular love of pansies, and every time I went home after visiting him, he would give me a pansy in a pot to take with me, which I would plant in a special corner of my own garden. As a primary school teacher, my mum was part of a group that ran eco courses at the local outdoor education centre, and by the time I was a teenager, I was helping her with those, particularly one called Sonship Earth, which invited children to engage with nature using all of their senses. Then I went to college. I was supposed to be studying for a degree in music and drama, but I lived in a house where I had my own garden for the first time, and that was where I discovered a real love of growing food. And that is still a big part of what brings me fullness of life. I love being out in my garden, and it's an unusual day when I don't get out there at all. There is always something to do. I'm also married to an ecological contractor, and our business, Alaska Ecological Contracting, which has been going for 35 years, uses big machines in an environmentally sensitive way to save endangered habitat. So I hope you can see that my love for the natural world is something that has always been part of my life. I think, like most of us who are activists, my awareness of the seriousness of the climate crisis has grown over time. Partly because of the work that my husband and now my son as well does. The natural world, the climate crisis, ecology in general is a very normal topic of conversation in our house. And that has created for me a much deeper connection with the issue of climate change. A defining moment was probably 15 years or so ago when my Christian faith became a much deeper and bigger part of my life than it had been previously. And climate change, for me, became an issue of climate justice. That was the point at which I started signing petitions, writing to big businesses, writing to my MP, and doing everything that seemed to be available to me at the time. It was incredibly frustrating. Mostly people didn't answer. Sometimes petitions made a difference, but so often it simply felt like people were patting me on the head and saying, yes, yes, you run away and play, we'll sort it out, and then seeing nothing change. Eventually, that frustration turned to desperation, and I realised that writing to big business and my MP and signing petitions was, for me, not enough. So I got involved with Extinction Rebellion and Christian Climate Action, and we went to the rebellion in London in October 2019. A group of us were on Lambeth Bridge as part of a group called the Faith Bridge. That's the part of Extinction Rebellion where people of all faiths come together in love for our sacred earth. On Lambeth Bridge, I and many others were arrested for the first time. For me, that was because I felt that as a Christian, I could no longer simply walk away from my belief that care of creation is an integral part of the expression of Christian faith, and that some fundamental things about the way that we live really have to change. Most notably, I think, our dependence on fossil fuels, so that we can walk more lightly on God's earth. Since then, as part of Christian Climate Action and the Faith Bridge and Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil, many other things have happened. One particularly beautiful thing was the Faith Bridge Vigil for the Earth. The idea was to have a prayer and meditation presence outside Parliament in London 24/7 throughout Lent 2020. I signed up to go to London and be part of it several times during Lent, but in the event I only got to go twice because the pandemic arrived, lockdown kicked in, and the vigil kept going online. It was an amazing thing to do though. The first time I went to London was to be part of a group. We were Christians and Buddhists together that day, and the connection that we felt as we taught our new Buddhist friends Taizé chants, and they taught us some of their Buddhist chants, was a deeply spiritual and beautiful thing. We took turns to be the person standing up and interacting with the public, because lots of people did stop to ask what we were doing. Some even stayed to join in with us. Rowan Williams, ex-Archbishop, who is a great supporter of climate justice, came and joined us briefly one day. And there were various conversations with MPs as they came and went. The second time I went up to London, I spent a couple of hours praying alone on the pavement. That was a lot more of a challenge, and it could be a whole different story. But I guess Jesus never said that following him was going to be easy. Since then, there have been other rebellions and actions. In London, in Glasgow for COP26, and in various other places, I have prayed on roads and pavements, surrounded by busyness and noise and police, and I have often found in those places that I was so deeply centred, so aware of the presence of God and of his care for what was on our hearts, that it's really quite difficult to put into words. Along with other Christian and Franciscan friends, I have marched, shouted, sung, prayed, kept vigil. I've been part of symbolic actions involving fake oil and various colours of paint. I have talked with many people. I've seen some change their attitude, found support in unlikely places, and have been on the receiving end of unpleasant verbal abuse from others. I have been arrested 4 times, prosecuted once, and I am prepared to do that again, because that is what I believe I am called by God to do. I do recognise, though, that what I do is not for everyone. Between April the 21st and the 24th, there is a protest in London called the Big One. The idea this time is not to get people arrested, but simply to get huge numbers of people out on the streets outside Parliament. The 4 days of the protest have been very much worked out in conjunction with the police and with those who are organising the London Marathon that happens on the Sunday of that weekend. As part of the protest, there will be inspiring talks, much music, outdoor worship including daily communion services, prayer walks and vigils. And everyone is invited to join in, either by coming or by keeping an eye on what's happening through social media and maybe praying for us in the background. I've already said that I know that what I do is not for everyone, but what is not okay is to go away and do nothing. We are not going to recycle our way out of the climate crisis, although recycling is obviously still a good thing to do. Perhaps as I've been talking, you've already seen a place where you fit within this, whether it be being out on the streets or whether it's from your armchair at home. If you haven't already, please find the place where you can contribute to being part of bringing climate justice to the whole of God's creation, and simply do whatever it is that you are called to do. Thanks for listening.